Gentleman from Washington, Mr. Newhouse.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and you're doing a great job this morning. Thank you all for being here and helping us understand the implications of this very important issue. Let me take the brief time I have to ask a couple questions real quickly. First of all, to Mr. Weber and Mr. Smith, perhaps you've talked about the cost of coal and the implications that it has had on our industries. I'm looking at, since its enactment, can you point to anything, whether anything of benefit, increased sales, any kinds of an upside to this at all? I'm trying to understand if there's that flip side to this as well.
No, sir, we've seen none. And you would think that as a branded beef company, one of the first branded beef companies in the U.S., if we saw an economic benefit associated with being able to identify products coming from a specific entity, whether it be product of the U.S., we would have, on our own fruition, approached USDA, because companies can do this, and asked to make label claims. We saw no benefit in the marketplace. We did demographic studies. We asked some of our customers, do you think the end consumer would like to see this type of information? And almost to a man, they have said no. So to answer your question, Congressman, we see no benefit whatsoever. No, sir.
Mr. Weber, any thoughts?
Yes, Congressman, I think I would agree with that statement. It's very hard to measure any type of economic benefit from country of origin labeling. Much more difficult than it is to label the cost of having to comply with country of origin labeling. The difficulty it presents for packers, processors, producers, clear down to the retail level. There's added costs involved, and it's hard to pinpoint that in any one sector. But from an economic benefit, I think it'd be extremely difficult to say the consumer is benefiting from country of origin labeling.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wenk and Mrs. Dempsey, can you tell me if the potential retaliation is having any impact on our industries already? Just the existence of the potential.
Well, you know, thanks, Congressman. I mean, I think this is a dark cloud that is forming over U.S. exporters right now, and I think that is very much why this hearing today is very timely. And as I said in my testimony, we believe that the way forward right now is for Congress to move forward on legislation to repeal the cool rule for muscle cuts of meat. And just in Washington, sir, if you look at our website, www.coolreform.com, you'll see that there are several products in your state that could be impacted by retaliatory tariffs: apples, cherries, pears, potatoes, video game consoles, to name a few. So this is a very urgent topic, sir, and it is having an impact, and it is a dark cloud that's forming over our exporters right now.
Thank you.
I agree with Mr. Wenk, and would just add that just as in the United States, customers overseas oftentimes plan months in advance, and once a decision is made to purchase, they're going to make that purchase. And so this looming threat of retaliation, which we believe will be very substantial given the disruption in Canadian and Mexican trade in this area, will have, and will have not an effect just on that one sale, but could, as we saw in the Mexico trucking case, it could affect sales to those customers for years to come, because once you lose that customer, you're not going to get them back very quickly again.
Right. Well, thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman, I've gone over. Thank you for your indulgence.
Mr. Newhouse, have any follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one line of questioning perhaps we haven't explored yet. Certainly we've talked about some of the negative impacts of retaliation, but are there other consequences of the U.S. being out of compliance with its trade obligations and being out of compliance with WTO obligations? What does that do to the development of other opportunities, perhaps in the marketplace internationally?
I'd offer just briefly, I mean, that concept of do as I say, not as I do, won't fly very well. I mean, I think it will pose astronomical challenges moving ahead, trying to negotiate any further trade agreement with any other countries.
I would just say from the manufacturing perspective, we already face a lot of trade barriers overseas on which we're trying to get resolution. There's over $12 trillion traded in manufactured goods worldwide, and the United States has 9% of that. That world trade in manufactured goods is about 3 times the size of all consumption of manufactured goods in the United States. So if we're going to grow our economy, we need to do more. And so putting the United States out of its traditional leadership role in the world economy to make us a bad actor will tell the rest of the world that they can go ahead and impose additional barriers. And at a time that we're negotiating 2 big trade agreements to try to level the playing field, to try to have fair trade so we can get better access to the world's markets, this type of action and our continued lack of compliance with WTO rules is really costing our leadership.
I would fully agree with those comments. We have to be portrayed as a respectable trading partner in these negotiations. And believe me, I think you were all aware of it in this room here, that market access is extremely difficult and world trade is extremely competitive. And we have to be portrayed as a respectable trading partner.
I would just add, to what Ms. Dempsey said, we helped write the rules of the World Trade Organization, so we ignore those rules at our own peril, and it just doesn't make sense for us to ask other countries to follow the rules and that we don't have to follow those rules. And, there are many instances where we have brought cases against other countries for discriminatory practices they have brought against us, and most recently India. We brought a case against India in the WTO in terms of agriculture products. So if we expect other countries to abide by these rules, we need to do the same.
I would also add from a small business perspective, it increases the lack of confidence in putting forth the investment that it takes to open up these markets. So if companies need to be sure that when they make that investment that it's going to stay for the long term. Now for the confectionery industry, we're facing the second set of retaliatory duties in 10 years. And that makes it difficult for companies to go the next step to make the investment that's necessary if they don't believe that the marketplace will last.
If I could, I would argue that we also need to defend our position here. In the WTO proceedings, it was pointed out that some 70 countries who are members of the WTO have very similar country of origin labeling rules. The WTO has never found against the law. They've found against how it was implemented. And so we ought to be precise about how we come into compliance, not simply throw out the law.
I appreciate all of your testimonies today, and again, thank you, Mr. Chairman.